Shalom, family. Welcome back. In today's lesson, we will be coming from the book of Mark, chapter 3, verse 24 and 25, contemporary English version, where it states, "A nation whose people fight each other won't last very long, and a family that fights long won't last long either." Today, we're looking at a lesson that every one of us can apply. The Messiah Yahuwah stated himself that a kingdom or family divided against itself cannot stand. Those words apply not only to a nation, but a family, also our homes, our assemblies, our friendships, and even our own personal conversations. You see, family, too often we listen long enough to prepare our next response. We interrupt one another in the midst of their speech and assume we know what the other person is going to say before they complete what they're saying. And many times before we totally hear them out, we interrupt them in the middle of their speech, assuming we know what they're about to say. And what happens is, most often when people are continually interrupted in the midst of their speech, one begins to speak louder than the other, and the other one begins to continually overtalk one another, and the end result is what we know as an argument. But in the book of Sirach or Ecclesiasticus, it tells us not to answer before we have completely heard what the other person was about to say. So in today's lesson, family, we will allow the scriptures, not our emotions, not traditions of men or opinion, to guide us. And every answer that we give pertaining to our lives should be rooted and grounded in the Most High and His Word. Book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 5, verse 1. "Keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to shema or hear than to give the sacrifices of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim. For Elohim is in Shamaim or heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore, let thy or your words be few." Listen, for a dream cometh through the multitude of what? Busyness, and a fool's voice is known by the multitude of their words. Continually talking, family. Listen. "When thou vowest a vow unto Yahuwah Elohim, defer not to pay it, for he have no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay it. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin, neither say thou before the Malachim that was an error. Wherefore shouldest Elohim be angry at thy voice and destroy the work of thine hands." Book of 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 30. Listen. "If anything be revealed to another that sitteth by, let the first hold his peace. For ye all may prophesy one by one, that ye all may learn, and may all be comforted. And the spirit of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For Yahuwah Elohim is not the author of confusion, but of peace, family, which is shalom, as in all the assemblies of the saints. And we see verse 34, but that's for another lesson. Book of Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 11, verse 7 and 8. Blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first and then rebuke. Answer not before thou or you has heard the cause, neither interrupt men in the midst or middle of their talk or speech. This is what causes arguments. So if you have to, family, put a timer, give yourself a 2-minute timer or a 3-minute timer, and let both fully say what they have to say without interruption for 2, 3, or 5 minutes. Give the same person the same amount of time that you give one another to speak, and I promise you this will quell many arguments. And always let your conversations be rooted and grounded in the word of Yahuwah Elohim. Then and only then will this cure, heal, and solve all arguments. You see? So you should not, according to the Messiah, interrupt a person in the middle of his or her speech. Book of Mark, chapter 3, verse 24 and 25, Contemporary English Version. A nation whose people fight each other won't last very long, and a family that fights won't last long either. I've seen in my personal life situations that have gone on for years and years, and these situations fester simply because they won't be respectful and listen to one another and totally hear one another out. Before a person can continually finishes whatever he or her has to say, they continually interrupt one another in the middle of their speech. Arguments take place because they won't be respectful to one another. They walk away. The situation is never rectified because they won't be respectful enough to hear one another out. That is utterly evil, and we should always be more ready to hear than to speak. That's why Yahuwah Elohim gave us 2 eyes, 2 ears, and only 1 mouth. So we should be more ready to listen and see and understand where an individual is coming from before we cut these people off in the middle of their conversation. That is wickedness, family. Be respectful of one another. Then and only then, as a family and as a nation of people, can true healing, deliverance, and restoration come once we are respectful of one another and learn to truly hear one another instead of listening to respond. Book of Jacob, or James, chapter 3, verse 8. Listen, but the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of poison. Therewith we barak Elohim, even the Father, and therewith we curse men which are made after the similitude of Yahuwah Elohim. Out of the same mouth proceed barak, Baruch, and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Doeth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine fig? So can no fountain yield both salt and fresh water. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if we have envying and strife, or bitterness in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish. For where envying and strife there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Book of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 28. Verse 8, The way of a man is forward and strange, but as for the pure, his works are right. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling or contentious woman or wife in a wide house. And ladies, please respectfully, that is not an attack towards you whatsoever. If it does not apply, let it fly. This is the closest scripture I could get to show that most people, men and women, do not like to argue. You see? So please, let's be respectful and totally hear one another out. You see? And stop cutting one another off in the midst or the middle of our speech. Book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse 19. Verse 18. Verse 17. Whatsoever ye do in word or deed, do it in the name of the sovereign Yahuwah, giving thanks to Elohim the Father by him. You see it there, Isha's wives, Gunes. Submit yourselves unto your own idios husbands, as it is fit in Messiah. Husbands, ahab, or love your wives, and be not bitter against them. Book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 41. Verse 40, the disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone that is perfect shall be as his teacher. And why beholdest thou the speck in thy brother's eye, but perceiveth not the beam that is in thine own eye? Either how canst thou say to thy brother, brother, let me pull out the speck that is in thine eye, when thou thyself beholdest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, cast out first the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to pull the speck out of thy brother's eye. For a good tree bringeth not forth a corrupt fruit, neither doeth a corrupt tree bringeth forth good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For of thorns of men do not gather figs, nor of a bramble bush gather they grapes. A good man out of a good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of an evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. Book of Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 4, verse 10. Be as a father unto the fatherless, instead of a husband unto their mother. So shalt thou be as the son of the Most High, and he shall love thee more than thy mother doeth. Wisdom exalteth her children, and layeth hold of them that seek her. Ecclesiasticus chapter 4, verse 30. Be not, listen men, be not as a lion in thy house, nor frantic among thy servants. And please, Oxenacotes, ladies and gentlemen, stop interrupting one another in the midst of our speech. Book of Galatians, chapter 5, verse 18. But if ye or you be led of the Spirit, which is the Ruach HaKodesh in Hebrew, ye are not under the law. Verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, is ahab, which is love, joy, peace, long suffering. You see, don't be so quick to throw in the towel with one another, because true love that is mentioned in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 keeps no record of wrongdoing. You see, but the fruit of the Ruach HaKodesh is joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are of the Messiah have crucified the flesh with the affections and the lust. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Book of Ephesians, chapter 4, verse 26. Verse 26. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not, listen, oxen of coatees, ladies and gentlemen, let not the sun go down upon your wrath, which is your anger. Learn to forgive one another, neither give place to the devil. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may give to him that have need. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good, to the use of edifying, that it may minister favor unto the hearers, and grieve not the Ruach HaKodesh of Elohim, whereby ye were sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you. Be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Elohim for the Messiah's sake have forgiven you. Which one of us in our lives have not needed mercy and forgiveness? As it states in Romans 3 and 23, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of Yahuwah Elohim. So let's be respectful of one another. Let's not be contentious, and let all of our answers be rooted in the word of Yahuwah Elohim. Book of Yeshayahu, chapter 8, or Isaiah, chapter 8, verse 20. Listen. To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. What is the light of Yahuwah Elohim? The answer is found in the book of Proverbs, chapter 6, verse 23. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is the light, and reproof of instructions are the way of life. Book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5. Trust in Yahuwah Elohim with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. The scriptures, in which the world calls the Bible, is our instruction manual. So to every decision that we make in our lives, it should be rooted and grounded in the word of Yahuwah Elohim, and never our own personal feelings and emotions. Family, let this lesson remain in our hearts throughout the week. If we truly desire unity as a family and a nation, we must first learn to listen. We don't always have to agree on every point immediately because all of us are at different levels of understanding. But we should respect one another enough to hear the whole matter before speaking, and may our conversations be filled with patience, humility, and wisdom. Let every answer be established by the word of Yahuwah Elohim instead of our own personal emotions or feelings. Pride never wins an argument. Remember to always be respectful, and may our words always be rooted and grounded in the scriptures. As Yahushua stated, a family or a nation divided against each other cannot stand. Let us be builders of peace, truth, and understanding wherever Yahuwah places us in our lives at any given time. Much love, family. Until next time, much love and respect. Thank you for spending time with me. Have a Baruch Yom, day or evening. Much love to all. Shalom.